Okay, welcome September 7th. This is our weekly Q&A. Tonight is week 66. This is where we talk about gardening and farming, the Georgic tradition, and all those fun things that help us be healthy and happy in the farms that we are living on and growing our food. So we're going to go ahead and get started here, and I have a quick presentation tonight, but before we get into that, I'm just going to remind everybody of the ways that I help people to grow food. I've got my YouTube channel, my weekly Q&A, which is this meeting. I have a Patreon account. You can get on there and see my video library. I'm a laboratory to do soil tests. And I have my Georgic schoolroom, which is a 17-week class. And we are taking signups for 2024. The graduation will be a week from this Saturday for the students that have been here this summer. So that's going to be fun. And then I have 3-day boot camps throughout the year, and I'm available for consulting. I've been doing some consulting work for people in different parts of the country, which has been super fun. And my book is done. If you don't have my book, get it on Amazon. And of course, I have a newsletter that comes out once in a while when I have something to say. All this information can be found at www.georgicrevolution.com. And tonight, our quick little presentation is getting gardens ready for winter. When you have a garden spot, at this time of year, September and October is a fantastic time to collect leaves and compost materials. You can get a lot of material to make a good compost pile at this time of year, because this is when a lot of people do cleanups of their raking leaves on lawns, and it's just a good time to get good stuff. Leaves are one of the best things to make composts out of, so I totally love leaves. There's another thing you can do. You don't have to make a compost. You can gather up all those leaves, just put them on your garden plot, and then set up a sprinkler system, even just one sprinkler with a garden hose that is on those leaves, and just let it run like every morning for an hour. And it will keep those leaves wet so that the wind will not blow them away. If you find that the wind is blowing them away, then they're not wet enough. Once you get them wet and matted down, they won't move. So that's a great thing to do, to get leaves on there. And even if you pile your leaves on there and they're 2 or 3 feet thick, that's fantastic. By springtime, especially in places where you have snow, they will be 4 to 6 inches thick, and that will be just right to go ahead and plant in. So that'll be a good thing to do this time of year in the fall. The other thing you can do at this time of year, if you have a garden plot that has really bad weeds, things like thistles, perennial pepperweed, and morning glory, and any other noxious weed that you don't like that just keeps coming back and it's causing you lots of problems, what you want to do is to put a tarp out there on that garden and just cover it with a tarp. Cover the tarp with things that are heavy. So that could be things like, fence posts, firewood, bricks, stones, anything you have to keep the tarp on the ground. That would be a great thing, just so that the weeds die out. And then next spring, those weeds will be dead and gone. But you need to do it early. You don't want to wait until these plants go dormant. You want to kill them. So do it right now, beginning of September. If you take the tarp off next spring, and within a couple of weeks the plants are growing back, then you just need to leave that tarp on for a longer period of time. So that is the key, having it on there long enough. Now, if you have morning glory and quack grass that you're trying to kill, sometimes you may want to leave that tarp on for a year. So that is a long time. But if you leave it on there for 12 months, it will kill out all the plant life. And so that's a good thing, to be able to get rid of those weeds, and then you can start over and start gardening with a fresh piece of ground. So if you have bad weeds and you're going to cover it with a tarp, but you still want to garden next year, go ahead and cover the whole thing now, but only take half of the tarp off in the springtime, and that's where you will garden. And then in the other half, leave it on all summer, and that'll kill out your weeds. And you'll still be fighting a few of these bad weeds where you took the tarp off. But that should help you to have a better gardening season than fighting all the miserable weeds. Okay, that was our quick presentation. That is done. Let's open this up for Q&A. Ask me your questions, tell me your problems and your goals and your dreams and your hopes, and I will see if I know anything to tell you.
So putting the tarp on goat heads will kill those too?
Yes, tarp will kill all plant life. So I don't know how long it will take. Now, if it's not going to necessarily kill your weed seeds. Right. So you want to remember, before you put the tarp down, water it really good. So get your sprinkler out there, get the ground really wet, like wetter than normal. So if you're normally going to water your garden, say for 12 hours, leave it on for 36 hours and get that ground super wet, and then take your sprinkler away and put the tarp down right then. And make sure you secure it so the wind doesn't blow it away.
Okay. So does the thick layers of cardboard work the same?
No. Thick layers of cardboard will smother out weeds a lot, but there are a few varieties of weeds that can come up through your cardboard. Now, if you're gardening every day, like you're growing plants actively and it's gardening season and you're out there growing stuff, if you see the little morning glories start to come up through your cardboard, because it'll cut them out 95%, but you still have that 5% where they'll come up. If you're out there every day looking at your garden, I have always argued that everybody has 15 minutes a day to walk to their garden. So go out there 15 minutes every day. When you see those little shoots coming up, then that's when you get them out, and it will weaken the plant so that they eventually will end up dying out. But if you have more than like one morning glory in every 10 feet across your garden, then you need a tarp because it will take over. But yeah, I mean, just to start out, put down the cardboard, put your detritus sphere on top of the cardboard, get planted in it, and that is a fantastic way to get going. But if we're talking about a large area, like a big garden, something like 50 feet by 200 feet, a big area, because a lot of people have big gardens like that, because you want a big potato patch and a big corn patch, and you're actually growing a lot of food, then I would prepare that land at first with tarping. Get those tarps down. Because it'll kill them out 100%. And your cardboard's about 95%. So
all right.
It will take care of your goat heads, though. So yeah.
So we are now sourcing wood chips again, and we were driving around town and saw some stacks of hay that looked pretty old near downtown, and we're trying to find out who the owner of the property is. There's also wood chips dumped on this lot, so I'm wondering if it's just places people put stuff and they're not going to do anything with it. I'm curious where the wood chips came from, but anyway, we're going to investigate that and see what we can do to get ready for winter. What we're going to do.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And then we're trying to figure out when to put in fruit trees. We'll have to run temporary hoses and water till we get that set up, the system.
Yeah.
But, we can buy down the way. We can buy from a nursery very mature trees that aren't cheap. But I wonder if we should mix those with some we're just going to plant, bare root or even from seed, and just kind of stagger it. So we'd have to plant these either bare root or the ones that are more mature in the next few weeks, I guess, and then water them, I guess, heavily until it starts to get cold. Or what's the process?
Yeah, so when it comes to fruit trees, I always tell people to go to your local nursery. Like if you have a local nursery that's owned by a person, not by a Walmart or a Home Depot, but a real person who knows what they're doing with trees, that's who you want to go to, because they're going to be the expert in your region on what to do. Because when it comes to trees, they can get kind of technical. I mean, I can give you lots of general information, but you want to know from your local nursery person the technicalities of exactly what you need to do in your area, and tell them where you live. Because, you know, I mean, a local guy, he's going to be dealing with people in probably 2, 3, 4 counties around him. And it could be different, you know, 60 miles this way versus 30 miles that way. He's going to give different advice. But those local guys, they know what they're talking about. I would listen to them when it comes to fruit trees, for sure. Yeah. I've always preferred planting the fruit trees in the springtime. But you can certainly have success planting in the fall. But go ask your local guys and see what they do. And it's always good if you can find a nursery guy who will guarantee a live tree. Like if you plant it this fall, if it doesn't wake up in the spring, does he guarantee it? And will he give you another one? Because nurseries often do that. And if they're doing that, then they're going to be giving you really good advice on how to get that tree to survive, because they're guaranteeing it, and you know they're losing money if it dies. So they want you to be successful.
We'll have to ask.
All right, good news. Okay, we're working on that too.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, and then we're going to be, your neighbor's going to help us with mowing the pasture down, and then we're going to do spread our seed for the grasses and the legumes and
Nice.
dry pasture seed farming.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good.
I had another question. So we were reading one of Joel Salatin's books about catching runoff. And the concern I have is that we are downhill from a cow field, and we're not sure what he does to his field. So he irrigates all the time. So I know that he's irrigating his forage, and he says he's worked on it over the years. It's taken him 20 years to get a good pasture for his cows. But he doesn't, you know, they all run on the same field all the time. And so I'm not certain. I mean, if we catch the runoff, I mean, are we concerned about whether he puts something on this field?
There's always a concern with that, but usually it's not a problem. It's probably going to be okay. I mean, if he's growing a beautiful field, then there's probably not a lot of contaminants in there. So I wouldn't be very concerned about that if he has a pretty nice pasture. Now, he may be using some methods. You know, he may have fertilizers, and he may spray a weed killer or something once in a while. But generally, if he's following the rules on those things, there's usually not a big concern with that.
Okay.
The biggest concern is when you have people in a town and they go buy chemicals, and then they're putting on 10 times more than they're supposed to. The runoff coming out of municipal cities is where we get the biggest toxins. It's not from farmers' fields, because most farmers and cattle people, they are usually pretty good at following the directions. So, but obviously that's just a general statement.
Sure.
I mean, who knows? I mean, go get to know your neighbor real well. It's the best.
Well, we talked to him a couple of times, but not well enough to feel like we could just grill him on what he does. I mean, he's been a farmer for 50 years, so we shouldn't be questioning him immediately, you know?
Yeah, right.
Unless we want to do exactly what he does and he watches us do it. I mean, maybe he'd be okay with that, but I don't know. But the way he talked about having developed his field over the last 30 years and making sure his pasture is good for his cows look amazing. So, and he irrigates all the time. So he's, you know, trying to keep up his grass, whatever he's got in there for them. So.
Yeah, nice. And here's the other thing. If you're following really good soil health principles, you can catch water that is contaminated pretty bad. And if you have really good fungal content in your field, then it will absorb toxins that do come onto you. Okay, so that's a good thing to know. Because, you know, we will use like just compost, compost extracts and teas, and then just the solid compost as a medium to do bioremediation, which is just means that when there's some kind of a toxin, we put that out there to clean up the some kind of a pollution in the environment.
Mhm.
So, you know, I mean, you've been listening to me a long time and you've got my book and all that stuff. So if you're doing those principles that I'm teaching, you could get some pretty nasty stuff come onto your property. And within a matter of days, at the most weeks, it would all be absorbed by the microbes.
Okay.
The key is a lot of living microbes.
Right.
So, yeah.
So if there's any concern, we just bought a storage shed that has asphalt shingles. We want to put gutters up and catch rain off of that. So if there's any issue, then if we have it prepared properly, whatever is in there that shouldn't be is going to be taken care of.
Right, yeah. Because the microbes are the thing that does the job. They're the thing
Right.
that clean it up.
Mhm.
So, yeah. You keep
Okay.
the microbes healthy and you wouldn't have to worry about it too much. So, yeah, if you can catch runoff from somewhere, that's fantastic. Catch it. Catch all the water you can get.
Mm-hmm.
Build
gonna
some
try.
swales, some ponds, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, do that. That's the right thing to do.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Ezekiel, any questions tonight?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So I have a friend I'm helping put in a bunch of native prairie grasses. They'd like to get their area back to being native prairie. And so we're working on that. We have Indian rice grass. We have a couple of others. And I was just wondering what we're looking at there as far as like, how do we, like, is there any issue with restoring native prairie grasses? I know it's the big thing everybody wants to do, obviously, because, you know, all the people are excited about it and such. But is that attitude completely warranted? Is it always a positive thing? Are there issues that we should be looking out for, that kind of stuff?
That's a good question, and it's a good discussion to have. And off the top of my head, I don't know of any negatives. Sometimes people think that they are restoring a native grassland, and they put in two species. Like they may plant a crested wheatgrass, and sometimes the plants that are growing can have allelopathic tendencies, which means that they put out phytohormones and toxins so that they grow really good, but other plants won't grow around them very good. So that's a thought. So when you plant, don't just plant one or two species, plant 30 to 70 species, plant as much as you possibly can at planting time, and that will give you the opportunity to just let nature do its thing. Because if you go into some of these established fields where you've had, you know, a decade or more of nothing growing there except for some of these species that do have allelopathic tendencies, then you spread seed out there and the seeds never sprout. But I have known people who have spread a lot of compost extract, and then the allelopathic tendency goes away and all kinds of things start to grow. So here again, it brings us full circle back to compost being the greatest thing ever invented. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's hearsay. I mean, and I've had teachers teach that too, but I've never experienced it.
So what you're saying is plant a ton of the plants. And should we attempt to artificially weed any non-native things that are just really persistent? I mean, eventually we want it to be all native grasses and plants. But I'm wondering if it might be bad or premature to do that right off the bat.
It's probably a good idea. You may want to mow it down once a year in the middle of the summer. If you have noxious weeds that are beginning to grow, mow them before the seed heads mature. For example, thistle. perennial pepperweed, and just anything that's going to seed. Mow them before they go to seed. So I'm not exactly sure where this is, but probably sometime in June, early July would be a good time to mow.
Okay. And so one additional thing, is there anything else beyond just inoculation with good microbes and whatnot that can reduce the effect of those allelopathic tendencies? Is there anything we could do to really, I mean, it sounds kind of funny to transplant grasses, but should we be considering doing transplant plugs for our grasses?
That can actually work. Yeah. If you did a bunch of plug trays with grasses that you want, you can go out in the early spring and get those planted in. That's a good idea. You just want them at the same dormancy level.
Yeah,
So-
I just scarified a whole giant, almost 5 gallons worth of seed, and now I'm putting it into a fridge. So to do the other part, I forget the name of it.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but how many acres are we talking about?
I think it's 5.
Yeah, you could get a group of people together and transplant 5 acres in a day. You'd need 25 people with dibbles.
And if we did that, how many seed? Well, just in general, assuming that all your seeds sprout, how many seeds should we do? Well, okay, that's actually jumping ahead of the horse. What size of plug tray would be ideal? How many seeds do you think could be good per plug tray? And then when we're putting them in the ground, how far apart would you recommend?
So a 200 cell plug tray would work. So they're about 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 by probably 1.5 to 2 inches deep.
Yep.
And then probably 2 to 3 seeds per plug. And yeah.
And then how far apart should we transplant them?
Oh, a foot.
A foot apart? Okay.
Yeah. See if you can get a 5 acres. See if you can get a couple of hundred cattle on there in the dormant season of the winter for about 3 months. Plant, have your, like, if there's snow on the ground, have somebody winter a herd of cattle on that field this winter, because where cattle have been, grass grows.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have time for one more question.
I think Holly's good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Awesome. Well, maybe we will call it a night. It's been good. Same time, same place, same link next week.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. You're welcome.
Bye. See you on the rest of the game.